The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. UAE deals sealed. The president's Middle Eastern tour now winding down, but not without another round of historic investments. Plus, Diddy's defense digging into its star witness, his former girlfriend, grilled as accusations of jealousy emerge. And also, Great Lakes states slammed. More than 200 million people now at risk for severe storms and possible tornadoes. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good evening and thank you for being here. I'm Diddy Gatton, and we begin with President Donald Trump, who has wrapped up his three-country Middle East investment tour and today signed a pact with the United Arab Emirates worth $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years.
We really appreciate your confidence and an investment. That's your biggest investment that you've ever made, and we really appreciate it.
Over the 3 days, the president inked deals exceeding $2 trillion, with more than $240 billion from Qatar and another $600 billion from Saudi Arabia. President Trump, before making his way to the UAE, also addressing the troops at the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, saying he is trying to bring peace to the world, but don't mistake restraint for weakness.
My priority is to end conflicts, not start them, but I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States of America or our partners.
While the president didn't threaten Iran directly with that comment, he did say, while in Qatar this morning, that while he wants to make a deal with Iran, they have a choice to make about how they can proceed when it comes to nuclear development.
There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step. Some people do. Many people do. I don't want to do that step. So we'll see what happens. But we're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace.
But as the president is optimistic a deal can be done, Iran's president says Trump is naive for thinking Iran will give in. He says Iran won't back down against the United States' demands. President Trump says Iran must give up on a nuclear weapon, and there is no negotiation on that point. Global conflict is taking center stage as the president winds down his Middle East visit, trying to shore up relationships and have the U.S. lead talks that could bring down the temperature. National correspondent Matt Gelka reports from Washington.
Russian President Vladimir Putin called for direct peace talks with Ukraine. But when the time came for a face-to-face meeting with Ukrainians in Turkey, Putin stayed behind in Russia and sent a delegation that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called low-level.
So far, I don't have official information, but it looks phony, and we will see what to do and what our steps will be after talking to President Erdogan.
Other Russian officials reportedly called Zelensky a clown and pathetic loser for demanding Putin attend. Top U.S. officials are also in Turkey, and while the president briefly floated traveling there himself, he opted not to go.
Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
Critics say Putin's no-show is evidence he's not serious about peace.
What a snub that is to the Ukrainians. Putin is not serious here, is what we're dealing with. And I think crippling sanctions by the Europeans, by the president, I think that is likely where we're going to be heading.
The Russia and Ukraine war is just one of the global flare-ups grabbing attention while the president visits the Middle East. He touted progress on a nuclear deal with Iran and also laid down a not-so-subtle threat.
I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step.
The president has repeatedly emphasized Iran can never have a nuclear weapon for security reasons in the region. Iran's president rejected Trump's threats, calling him naive to think Iran would back down against his demands. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Sean Diddy Combs' former girlfriend faced defense attorneys today as they cross-examined the prosecution's star witness. The defense had Cassie Ventura read explicit text messages she sent to Combs early in their relationship that suggested she liked to make love to him after their freak-offs. The notion is she was more involved in the parties than she previously testified. And the Supreme Court today, in a unanimous ruling, is questioning the use of excessive force by police. The court is ordering the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to revisit a case of Ashton Barnes, a black man who was killed in a traffic stop in Houston. Lower courts dismissed claims of excessive force by the police because the officer, quote, feared for his life. The higher court said the lower courts did not use the proper standard in their rulings. Now to Washington, where the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a case examining the authority of lower court judges to issue nationwide or universal injunctions. Just like many previous presidents, President Donald Trump believes lower court judges have too much power and have been using it to block his agenda. As Christine Frizzell reports, the case stems from the president's executive order banning birthright citizenship in some cases.
Outside the Supreme Court, hundreds gathered in support of the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, which President Trump for years has said he opposes.
The 14th Amendment is very questionable as to whether or not somebody can come over, have a baby, and immediately that baby is a citizen.
But inside the courtroom, questions mostly focused on just how far the president can go in carrying out that conviction.
There are 680 district court judges, and they are dedicated and they are scholarly, and I'm not impugning their motives in any way, but you know, sometimes they're wrong.
You claim that there is absolutely no constitutional way to stop, put this aside, to stop a president from an unconstitutional act.
The High Court asked to weigh in on nationwide injunctions. In the case of the 14th Amendment, 3 lower court judges have blocked Trump's policy from taking effect. Since taking office, more than a dozen nationwide injunctions have been issued on multiple Trump policies. Critics and the Justice Department arguing that puts too much power in the hands of judges to block the president's agenda.
Universal injunctions exceed the judicial power granted in Article 3, which exists only to address the injury to the complaining party.
Critics have a different take.
That if you don't like the nationwide injunctions that federal judges, both Republican and Democrat, are issuing, that don't do illegal, unconstitutional stuff.
If the justices side with Trump, as they appear they may, it could have a sweeping impact on the power of lower court judges in this country.
It means that the judges' decisions would be much more limited. It would just be in front of the people before them, not for the whole country.
Again, an immediate answer on the question of birthright citizenship is unlikely, but a decision on some of the big questions raised in this case is expected sometime before July. Didi?
It's so interesting that they're wrestling not only about, immigration, but judicial power, Christine. Any indication on which way the court is leaning?
So I will say justices seem a little skeptical of President Trump's desired restrictions on birthright citizenship. After all, the 14th Amendment literally says all persons born or naturalized in the United States. But the conservative justices also seem to have some wiggle room in terms of what we've been seeing with these universal injunctions to continue. Justice Clarence Thomas pointed out these weren't even used until the 1960s and weren't common until after 2007.
Live from Washington, D.C., Christine Frizzell, thank you. A Wisconsin judge says she is not guilty of helping an illegal alien evade ICE agents. Dozens of supporters of Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan protested outside court today. You can see them here before her arraignment hearing on federal charges. Prosecutors claim Dugan escorted the migrant out through a back door on April 18th to protect him. The agents found him and arrested him anyway. Dugan could face up to 6 years in prison if convicted. And Newark Mayor Ross Barranca was also in court today, but did not enter a plea, instead leaving to be processed by U.S. Marshals against the advice of his lawyers. Barranca was arrested last Friday outside an ICE detention center accused of trespassing. He claims he had permission to enter the facility.
We believe that I was targeted in this. I was the only person arrested. That's right. I was the only person identified. I was the only person, they put in a cell. The only person that was in cuffs, and the only person that's here this morning going through this humiliation for these people.
The case will probably go to trial this summer. The DOJ has been investigating United Health Group for potential fraud since at least last summer, according to the Wall Street Journal. It's looking into United Health's handling of its Medicare Advantage business practices. The company says there are no problems with that, and it wasn't informed about the department's actions. The DOJ hasn't commented. And Florida is now the second state after Utah to ban fluoride in public drinking water. Governor Ron DeSantis just signed the Florida Farm Bill into law restricting additives in water systems. DeSantis called adding fluoride to tap water forced medication and said it can harm health. The American Dental Association has said fluoride reduces cavities. The ban takes effect July 1st. Just ahead, millions on alert for powerful storms and possible tornadoes. The Midwest metros now facing a multi-day threat. Plus, one of America's most popular bargain retailers raising prices, why the big box giant says there's nothing they can do. Then a potential strike that could derail travel on the East Coast. The scheduled walkout now just hours away if a deal isn't made. As we come back on the air, here's our live look over a very cloudy Chicago this evening as a line of severe thunderstorms from Chicago all the way to the Canadian border in Minnesota make their way across the North Midwest. This system is threatening nearly 60 million Americans with elevated risks of tornadoes, extreme wind and hail. The weather threat will make its way into Michigan later tonight. Then tomorrow, at least 33 million Americans face a slight or an enhanced risk of severe storms. That number swells to 100 million with a marginal threat, according to the National Weather Service. Tornadoes are possible in parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky. You can always get the latest weather updates on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. We are tracking it all for you. Federal Emergency Management Agency officials say they are not ready for hurricane season on June 1st. That's according to CNN, citing an internal agency report. It says FEMA is dealing with low morale, new red tape that it says could slow things down, and poor coordination with states. FEMA has faced staffing cuts and criticism from the Trump administration. And turning to America's economy, despite President Trump's sweeping tariffs, U.S. wholesale prices dropped for the first time in over a year and Americans are actually spending more. New data shows the producer price index fell 0.5% last month, the biggest drop here in 5 years. Sales at retail stores and restaurants, they rose slightly, 0.1%. And we also know some economists are saying the spending is to get ahead of the tariffs and that we'll start to see their impacts next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell also remains cautious.
The economic environment has changed significantly since 2020, and our review will reflect our assessment of those changes. Longer-term interest rates are a good deal higher now, driven largely by real rates, given the stability of longer-term inflation expectations. Higher real rates may also reflect the possibility that inflation could be more volatile going forward than during the inter-crisis period of the 2010s.
And Walmart is raising its prices, most likely starting later this month. Today, the CEO said it's necessary because President Trump's tariffs are increasing the cost of products like electronics and toys. It's one of many companies increasing prices in response to the 10% universal tariffs on imports, plus higher tariffs for China. Meanwhile, Boeing has inked a landmark $96 billion deal with Qatar Airways, the airline's largest order on record. This deal is a windfall for Boeing's Everett factory in Washington, but aviation experts say the positive impacts will be felt all across the country. Still, there is a question about whether or not Boeing can actually meet the demand. The National News Desk, Lynn Ann Wynn, is in Everett with more.
From Boeing, that's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good.
Qatar Airways puts in its largest order yet for 160 Boeing 787 Dreamliners and 777-9s, with an option for an additional 50 planes. Those 777s developed and built right here at Boeing's Everett factory, where more than 30,000 people are employed. Though aviation experts say this multi-billion-dollar deal will be felt far beyond the North Sound.
Boeing is a global company. I mean, there are folks in Helena, Montana that are going to benefit by this because of Boeing's presence there. Folks down in Denver are going to benefit. All the way through, it's going to trickle through the entire economy.
Senator Maria Cantwell reacting to the news, calling it a big win and saying it's also good to see U.S. manufacturers winning in the lucrative wide-body airplane market. It's also a reminder why it's time to sell to meet big demand instead of pursuing trade disruptions. But aviation experts warn it's important to be cautiously optimistic with this landmark deal.
This is a huge order, but keep in mind Qatar Airways earlier had to cancel an order for 50 737s because Boeing couldn't deliver them, and they took that order over to Airbus.
Boeing says the company is looking forward to getting started on the record-breaking deal to produce the requested aircraft over the next decade.
What the president has done is put it on their desk and said, I came out for you. This was a customer that didn't want to buy your airplanes because you couldn't deliver them. Now I got you an order, so you better produce.
Officials are warning hundreds of thousands of people who work in New Jersey and New York City about a possible rail strike at midnight. New Jersey Transit says it will increase bus service if necessary, but that won't be enough to handle all the current train passengers. Train engineers are asking for higher wages. It's not clear if any recent progress has been made. And cracks have been showing inside the Democratic Party for several months now, and the last few days really made it impossible to ignore. The National News Desk, Angela Brown, is breaking down the chaos from leaks about donors to the DNC chair that may be pushed out.
The Democratic Party's identity crisis heading into the midterms, but hold on, donors are plotting 2028 already. Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett going viral for saying what many Democratic donors will only whisper in private.
Every time we voted for a woman, we've lost so far. And I think that that's a natural fear because we just want to win. So there's a lot of people that are like, you know what? Like, let's go find the safest white boy we can find.
Crockett didn't name names, but just days ago, all eyes were on Pete Buttigieg holding a town hall with veterans in Iowa, claiming he's not running, still can't escape Biden or 2024.
Would the party have been better off if he had just not run for re-election?
Maybe. And, right now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think most people would agree that that's the case.
The Democrats got clobbered with working class voters in 2024. NBC News exit polling revealing that Trump took 56% of that vote. And that loss isn't just a number. It's a warning sign. Dr. Sharon Austin, a political scientist, says Democrats need to wake up to who their actual base is.
As far as who is the Democratic base, in terms of the people who are more likely to vote in those battleground states, those are the working class whites who have pretty much just been leaving the party in droves.
Democrats are bleeding young male voters as well, and this week may not help. David Hogg, their Gen Z voice of the DNC, is on the verge of losing his seat. That's the same guy who wanted to primary Democrats.
So my question is this really a matter of philosophy, or is this a way of trying to remove somebody trying to challenge the status quo?
In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Dangerous levels of arsenic and cadmium have been found in over 100 different brands of rice, according to a new report from Healthy Babies Bright Futures. It says 1 in 4 rice samples contain too much arsenic. The co-author says arsenic and cadmium are linked to problems like developmental and reproductive harm and heart disease. California-grown sushi rice had some of the lowest levels. Cooking rice, like pasta, can reduce arsenic content. Coming up next on the National News Desk, the severe damage people in Maryland are still cleaning up from after major floods earlier this week. We'll be right back in 90 seconds. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From Western Maryland, where many residents are still in cleanup mode after major floods, to Nashville, where a 100-year-old World War II veteran just signed a record deal for a song on the story of his life. We're taking the pulse of America, but we start in Washington, where a multi-day manhunt is finally over for a fugitive accused of shooting at deputies.
Yeah, I haven't slept since the shooting, so hoping tonight I can get some rest. Happy to know that the community is not in danger anymore.
A sigh of relief for Thurston County Sheriff Derek Sanders, who now knows 27-year-old Damian Madison is behind bars.
The statements he was making, we knew he was still potentially armed.
Madison had been on the run since May 8th when he reportedly shot at a Thurston County deputy in Tenino with an AR-15. A 10-time felon, Madison had several warrants out for his arrest, including a drive-by shooting and first-degree assault.
I mean, if he's not held indefinitely at this point, I don't know what it would take. With the amount of crimes he's committed across multiple state lines, it won't surprise me to see this case go federal.
We had literally like rivers running down the hollow up there. This was all mud. Main Street was cut off. People couldn't get to their children. The flooding, there was no controlling.
Longtime resident Sandy Corsaro says these images best tell the story of what happened here. Westernport Elementary surrounded by rising floodwaters with the children and staff inside. Then 2 men appear with children on their shoulders. One of them is Dustin Nash, carrying his daughter Aria to safety. He says when he heard what was happening, he rushed from work and hopped the fence to get to his little girl.
Wasn't thinking much. I was just thinking get to her, get her out of there.
I think he's a really good man for doing that.
I mean, the most important thing in my life.
John Rich is talking to the guest of honor, 100-year-old Don Graves, the oldest man ever to sign a recording contract in Nashville. His one song, a big one, the story of his life. The story of the grit and perseverance of Iwo Jima.
We formed the best crack division the Marine Corps had. We lost 7,000 kids on the island.
To call Graves an energetic 100 is an understatement. He is a one-man storytelling machine.
So where did you get your credentials? I said in the Bible. What do you mean? Born again. Born again, that's what I have.
Moments later, he's on Iwo Jima, the only flamethrower soldier to survive that battle. A man who saw perhaps the most famous photo of World War II in real-life bloody color.
But when it went up, 520 ships right in the bay let go with their horns and whistles and rockets, everything that would go on fire in the air. It was a spectacle.
So grateful for his service, and what a storyteller as well. Coming up next here, the hundreds of thousands of cars being recalled because the brake line can lose function while driving. We'll be right back. Ford is recalling more than 273,000 vehicles due to a brake line issue. All Ford Expeditions and Lincoln Navigators made in 2022 through 2024 should be brought in for repairs. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, an installation defect can cause an issue with the brake line, causing a fluid leak or loss of function while driving. Owners can have their vehicles inspected and fixed at no cost at Ford and Lincoln dealerships. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening starting at 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. I'm Didi Gatton. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight at 10.